Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us your sources, and we're here to really dig into what matters.
That's the plan.
So today we're looking at something huge, something unfolding right now, the proxy war between Israel and Syria.
And the massive change recently, of course, was the collapse of the Assad regime, December 2024.
Exactly. Total game changer. So our mission here is to cut through all the noise, give you a clear picture.
The history, who's involved now, what they want.
Right. And the fallout, geopolitics, the economy, the human cost. We've gone through a stack of articles on this.
And there are some surprising things coming out. Israel's actions, for instance, they've really ramped up.
Yeah, and the new role of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. I mean, who saw that coming?
Right. So yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so to really get this, we need to step back a bit, right? This didn't just start.
Oh, definitely not. This conflict, it's built on decades of bad blood. Goes right back to Israel's founding in 48.
And Syria's role in the big Arab-Israeli wars.
Exactly. Those early wars really set the stage. Hostility was baked in from the start.
And a huge piece of that puzzle has to be the 1967 war, the Six-Day War.
Right. And Israel taking the Golan Heights.
Which they still occupy. That seems like a constant friction point.
It absolutely is. Strategically, the Golan is vital. You get commanding views, militarily speaking, and, crucially, control over water, which is, gold in that region.
Syria tried to get it back in 73, right? But failed.
They did, unsuccessfully. And Israel later annexed it, which, well, nobody really recognized internationally, but it's still a major bone of contention.
Then things kind of shifted or expanded maybe into Lebanon, especially during the civil war there.
Yeah, Lebanon became another key battleground for this rivalry. During their civil war, 75 to 90.
Both sides were heavily involved.
Deeply involved. Syria, Israel, backing different factions, playing different sides.
And that's when Hezbollah really emerged.
That's right. Hezbollah came up during that time, initially with Syrian backing, then later significant Iranian support. Syria saw Lebanon as, well, critical for its own security, the leverage against Israel.
And it wasn't only Hezbollah that Syria supported, was it?
No, not at all. For years, Damascus was basically a hub.
A hub for who?
For lots of Palestinian militant groups. They got political backing, logistical help, you name it.
So Syria really cemented itself as a major backer of anti-Israel groups.
Absolutely. That was a core part of their policy.
Then 2011 happens, the Syrian civil war kicks off.
Right. And that just throws everything into chaos. It becomes this incredibly complex, multi-layered proxy fight.
And Iran's role changed then.
Dramatically.
Huh.
As Assad weakened, Iran stepped up massively, starting around 2013.
How so?
They sent in their own forces, mobilized Shia militias, including Hezbollah, to prop up the regime.
Which must have set off massive alarm bells in Israel.
Huge ones. And that leads us to what some call Operation Chess.
This sustained Israeli air campaign inside Syria.
Precisely. Starting around 2013, Israel began hitting targets consistently. Iranian infrastructure, weapons convoys, heading to Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Hezbollah positions inside Syria, too.
Yes, those as well. It marked a real shift towards more direct Israeli action, trying to stop Iran setting up shop permanently on their northern border.
But interestingly, around the same time, Israel was also running Operation Good Neighbor.
Yeah, that's a fascinating contrast. Between 2013 and late 2018, Israel provided humanitarian aid, medical help, food, supplies to Syrian civilians near the border.
Humanitarian, but maybe with strategic motives, too.
Well, it certainly didn't hurt strategically. Building goodwill, maybe gathering some intelligence in a really sensitive area, a dual purpose, you could say.
So we see this evolution, direct wars, then proxy fights, then back to more direct Israeli intervention, aimed squarely at Iran and Hezbollah.
Exactly. That sets the stage for.
For the bombshell, December 2024, Assad falls. Unexpectedly.
Totally unexpected for most. And swift. The fall of Damascus on December 8th to HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. It just fundamentally changed the entire strategic picture.
HTS led this offensive in late November. It seemed incredibly fast.
It was incredibly fast. The Syrian army, after more than a decade of war, dwindling support.
Right.
They were weakened.
Right.
So the HTS-led coalition just made these rapid gains. City after city fell. Then Damascus itself, a real domino effect.
And then this transitional government steps in, led by Ahmed al-Shura. What were they focused on initially? It must have been chaos.
Absolute chaos. Their first job was just trying to get control. They put out some initial declarations, talked about a new constitution, elections down the line.
Trying to look legitimate.
And trying to engage internationally.
Yeah.
Saying, we're not Assad.
Yeah.
Attempting to build some kind of legitimacy.
Israel's reaction, though, wow, Almost 500 airstrikes in 2 days.
That
Yeah,
sounds
massive.
is massive. And it wasn't just reactive. It signaled a calculated move by Israel to basically reshape the security situation now that Assad was gone.
What were they hitting?
Remaining Syrian military gear, strategic sites, places they suspected held chemical weapons. A systematic takedown.
And it wasn't just from the air, right? They moved ground troops too.
Correct. Israeli ground forces went into the UNDOF buffer zone.
That's the UN zone in the Golan.
Yeah, set up after the 73 war. They set up new bases, pushed the security zone further into Syria, even took positions on the Syrian side of Mount Hermon.
Strategic high ground.
Very strategic.
What was the wider reaction? Regionally? Internationally?
Mixed and cautious, mostly. A lot of concern about HTS taking over, given their history.
Their jihadist roots.
Yeah, exactly. Western countries were wary, urging inclusivity, human rights. Aid kept flowing, but there was talk of maybe easing sanctions slowly, depending on what the new government did.
So it really feels like Israel saw a vacuum and just moved incredibly fast to exploit it.
That's certainly how it looks. Neutralize threats, reshape the border to their advantage.
Suggests they have plans ready.
It strongly suggests contingency planning, yes.
Yeah.
Degrade Syria's military, get a better security setup. Proactive, not just reactive.
Okay, so now we have this totally new reality in Syria and a whole cast of international players trying to navigate it.
A very crowded stage. You've got Israel, the new HTS-led Syria, Iran, Russia, the US, China, Turkey, the EU, all with skin in the game.
And often with conflicting goals, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with Israel. Their objectives seem pretty clear now.
Countering Iran and Hezbollah is still #1.
Top priority. Stop weapons transfers, secure the northern border, maybe create a bigger buffer zone.
And they don't want a strong Syria emerging.
They seem to prefer a weaker, maybe decentralized Syria. And they want assurances from the new government, no threats, cooperation on things like chemical weapons.
And their military actions since December reflect this.
Clearly, the airstrikes intensified massively all over the country. Aleppo, Damascus suburbs, Edusweda, Cointra near the Golan.
And the ground incursions too?
Yes, direct ground moves. Expanding their control zone over 460 square kilometers by early 2025, apparently. Building new infrastructure, hitting weapons depots.
They're also engaging with Druze communities.
Yeah, in southern Syria. Offering protection, economic help, like work permits in the Golan. Trying to build influence.
How did they view the HTS government itself?
With deep, deep skepticism. Given HTS's origins, Israel's worried. Worried about their weakness now, but also potential hostility if they get stronger.
So they're warning them off.
Yeah, warnings against moving south of Damascus towards the border. It really looks like Israel's aiming for a physical security buffer and seriously degrading Syria's military power, maybe hoping for a federalized Syria down the road.
But there's pushback.
We're starting to see it. Complaints from the new Syrian government, reports of new Iran-backed groups popping up.
Okay, what about Syria itself? Under HTS leadership, they must be facing enormous challenges.
Monumental. Just holding on to control is job one. Then trying to integrate or neutralize other factions, the SNA, the SDF, preventing sectarian violence.
And the economy. The humanitarian crisis.
Catastrophic. Plus, they're dealing with leftover pro-Assad fighters and clashes with Hezbollah, mostly over smuggling, it seems.
And internationally, what are they trying to achieve?
Recognition, basically, and getting sanctions lifted. They're trying to build ties with Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia.
What about Iran? That relationship must have changed completely.
Totally. Their stance towards Iran is very cautious now, emphasizing Syrian sovereignty, non-interference. A huge shift from the Assad era.
And their stance towards Israel, that's got to be tricky.
Incredibly delicate. Publicly, they say they don't want conflict, willing to respect old agreements, but they condemn Israel's incursions.
Any direct communication.
There are reports, unconfirmed, of indirect talks via Qatar, deconfliction talks, and reports of them cracking down on some Palestinian groups maybe as a signal.
And trying to show they're fighting terrorism, ISIS.
Yes, fighting ISIS remnants, saying they'll cooperate on chemical weapons. It all looks like forced pragmatism. They're weak, they need stability.
Right. Now, Iran. Assad's fall must be a massive blow for them.
Huge strategic setback. Their whole land bridge idea to Lebanon, supporting Hezbollah that way,
Disrupted.
severely disrupted, projecting power against Israel, the U.S., that's all much harder now. Some Iranian officials have even admitted it's a defeat.
So what are they doing now? How are they adapting?
Well, they'll likely keep supporting Hezbollah just through different means, maybe back other loyalist groups, stir up insurgency inside Syria.
And propaganda.
Lots of propaganda against the new government, trying to get debts repaid. Apparently, Syria owes Iran billions, and opposing any normalization between Iraq and the new Syrian government.
So more covert stuff now.
Seems likely. Covert ops, supporting insurgents, information warfare. They're reacting, adapting.
Okay, Russia. They were Assad's main backer. What's their position now?
Their leverage is definitely reduced, but they want to keep their influence, especially their bases.
Hymim Air Base, Tartus Naval Port.
Exactly. And interestingly, HTS seems sort of conditionally okay with them staying.
What about the deconfliction line with Israel? Still working.
Probably, but it must be under strain with all the Israeli strikes. Russia has condemned the strikes publicly.
So a more cautious Russia.
Pragmatic engagement with HTS, trying to stay relevant in any future political settlement, more transactional, maybe a weaker negotiating hand now.
And the United States. What's the U.S. approach to this new Syria?
Well, initially it was cautious engagement with HTS, but then came this potential big shift announced in May 2025 by President Trump.
What was that?
Talking about restoring a normal relationship, maybe lifting sanctions. There was even a reported meeting with al-Shara in Riyadh.
Really? But with conditions.
Yes, definitely conditional. Things like no foreign fighter leadership in government, cracking down on terrorism. The U.S. Treasury did issue a license, General License 24, after Assad fell, which maybe eased some things slightly.
What about U.S. troops? Still there?
Yep, around 900 to 1,000 in the northeast. Still focused on ISIS, still supporting the SDF, their Kurdish partners.
And broader U.S. goals. Iran, Israel.
Still trying to contain Iran, manage Turkey, support Israel's security. There was even talk earlier of Trump pushing for Syria-Israel normalization under the Abraham Accords.
And aid.
Historically, the U.S. was a major aid donor. Some reports of cuts in 2025 before the sanctions talk. But lifting sanctions would obviously help aid flow.
So the U.S. is grappling with engaging a designated terrorist group.
That's the dilemma. The risks of legitimizing HTS versus using diplomatic and economic tools instead of just military presence, a real balancing act.
China's interests has always seemed more economic, right? Belt and Road?
Primarily, yes. Syria joined the BRI in 2022. China's invested in oil, infrastructure, energy, became a top economic partner.
How are they handling the HTS government?
Cautiously, pragmatically, talking about sovereignty, non-interference, supporting the UN process.
But they have security concerns, too.
A big one. Uyghur fighters in Syria. China's worried they could use Syria as a base to plan attacks back in Xinjiang. They're pushing HTS hard on that.
So maybe an opportunity for China to gain influence.
Potentially, with Russia and Iran weakened. But their engagement will likely be transactional economic help in return for security action and stability.
Okay, last one. Turkey. They've been involved since day one. What do they want now?
Border stability is key. Stop more refugees coming in, counter the Kurdish YPG PKK groups they see as terrorists, and ideally have a friendly government in Damascus.
Which currently seems to be HTS.
For now, yes. Their relationship with HTS is complex, pragmatic. They talk Turkey seen as a major backer for al-Shara, despite the terrorist designation.
And Turkey still has troops in northern Syria.
Significant presence, cross-border operations. There's even talk of a defense pact with the new Syrian government air bases, training.
How does that sit with Israel?
That's creating friction. Israel is wary of a stronger Syria, especially one influenced by Turkey. Accusations fly back and forth.
Is there any deconfliction between them?
Apparently, yes. A mechanism has been set up, but it sounds fragile. Turkey's focus has shifted from just getting rid of Assad to border security, refugees, and working pragmatically with HTS. This tension with Israel is definitely something to watch.
Right, so that covers the main states. But the non-state actors are just as crucial. Hezbollah, HTS itself.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Let's start with Hezbollah. Before Assad fell, they were deeply embedded in Syria.
Fighting alongside Assad's forces, using Syria for supplies.
Exactly. Crucial combat support. Syria was their transit route from Iran, potentially another front against Israel. Assad's fall was a massive blow for them.
How so? Supply lines cut.
Land bridge disrupted, yeah. They've had to pull back from many areas, and they're even clashing with the new Syrian government forces now.
Clashing. Over what?
Seems mostly over smuggling routes, control over lucrative cross-border trade.
So what's Hezbollah's strength in Syria now? What are they trying to do?
Significantly reduce presence, reduce capability inside Syria. Their main focus is back on Lebanon now.
Survival mode in Lebanon.
Pretty much. They might try to keep some border influence for smuggling, maybe reestablish some supply lines, but their priority is rebuilding in Lebanon. There were some reports of attacks in Western Homs they might have been involved in, but
Overall, their role in Syria is much smaller.
drastically curtailed. Assad's gone, Israel's hammering them, including reportedly with cyber attacks disrupting their command structure, and the new government in Damascus is hostile, from allies to adversaries inside Syria.
So less of a direct threat to Israel from Syrian soil for now.
The direct military threat, yes, but smuggling could definitely continue.
Okay, now HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They've gone from rebels to rulers, essentially.
That's the picture. They led the offensive. Their leader, al-Shara, is heading the transitional government.
And they're trying to project a more moderate image.
Definitely trying. Talking governance, stability, unity, protecting minorities, promising elections.
But concerns remain about their ideology, their past.
Huge concerns. Their Salafi jihadist roots, their human rights record in Idlib, past links to al-Qaeda, those haven't gone away. And the new draft constitution mentioning Islam as the main source of law worries many internationally.
How are they viewed internationally? Still designated terrorists?
Yes, by the UN, by many countries. That's a massive hurdle for getting recognition, getting aid. But they are doing a lot of diplomatic outreach.
So what's their role in the conflict dynamics now?
Well, they are the state actor Israel and others have to deal with now in Damascus. It's tense with Israel condemning incursions, but these reported indirect talks happening.
And internal threats.
Still facing threats from ISIS remnants, pro-Assad groups, plus these clashes with Hezbollah over smuggling. It's a really tough balancing act for them.
Consolidate power, manage crises, gain acceptance.
All while having this controversial past.
Yeah.
And Israel's buffer zone actions are a direct challenge to their sovereignty. Their pragmatic moves, cracking down on some Palestinian groups, being cautious with Israel, seem all about survival and internal stability right now.
And there's still other militant groups floating around. It sounds incredibly fragmented.
Very fragmented. You've got other Iranian-backed militias, maybe less visible now, potentially going underground, sporting insurgency. Groups like Liba Fatimiyan, Zainab Biyan.
ISIS still active.
Low-level insurgency, yeah.
Yeah.
Mainly east and central Syria.
Okay.
Both the new government and the SDF are fighting them.
What about the Turkish-backed SNA?
Still active up north. Complex relationship with HTS. They fought Assad together, but SNA is also focused on fighting the SDF. Integrating them into a national army is a huge challenge.
And the Kurdish SDF.
Still control the northeast. There was talk of an agreement back in March 2025 to integrate them into state institutions, but details are vague. They're key U.S. partners against ISIS, but under pressure from Turkey.
Any pro-Assad resistance left?
Small pockets, yeah.
Oh.
Coastal areas, Western Homs maybe. Claiming some attacks, but seem limited.
So a real patchwork. Makes it hard for HTS to consolidate power.
Exactly. Deep fragmentation. Creates risks, but also opportunities for outside actors to meddle. Very volatile security situation, drains HTS resources.
This interplay, it's just incredibly complex, a real geopolitical chess game.
And Assad's fall just cranked up the intensity of that game.
Yeah, you can feel the power dynamics shifting.
Definitely. The Iran-Syria-Hezbollah axis looks much weaker. Turkey seems to be stepping up, which creates this new rivalry with Israel.
Israel's being much more assertive.
Much more. And then you have the potential U.S. policy shift under Trump, Russia adapting, China watching.
Yep.
EU influence seems limited on the security front.
With all this tension, those deconfliction mechanisms must be vital.
Absolutely crucial to stop accidents. The Israel-Russia one, who knows how effective it is now with Russia weaker and Israeli ops way up.
And new ones. Israel-Turkey.
Yeah, reportedly a new one there because their interests are increasingly clashing up north.
Yeah.
And these indirect Syria-Israel talks via Qatar.
So cooperation just to avoid collisions amidst all the competition.
Pretty much. Operational safety first.
We also have to talk about the information war. Disinformation, cyber attacks.
Oh, huge element. Post-Assad Syria is perfect territory for disinformation.
What kind of stuff?
False stories about HTS and Israel working together, fake attacks on minorities, lies about detainees, anything to sow chaos or discredit opponents.
Iran's involved.
Yeah, Iranian propaganda pushing sectarian narratives, going after HTS, countering Turkey. HTS probably used disinfo too during their takeover.
And cyber, still a factor between Israel and Iran.
Big time. Ongoing reports of Israeli cyber ops hitting Iran, Hezbollah disrupting communications, spying, malware, reportedly affecting Hezbollah inside Syria, plus past claims of Israel hitting Syrian air defenses.
So it's a war of narratives, too.
Absolutely. Controlling the story is key. Lots of calls for restraint on this front, but it's hard to police.
All this fighting, instability, the economic cost must be astronomical.
Devastating. Just devastating. Syria's economy is shattered. The UN estimates $800 billion lost GDP since 2011.
800 billion.
Staggering. GDP is a tiny fraction of what it was. Over 90% poverty. Infrastructure destroyed. Reconstruction estimates range from $250 billion up to nearly $1 trillion.
Wow.
Unemployment's through the roof. Currencies collapsed. People depend on aid. Agriculture, manufacturing, oil, all decimated. And Israeli actions in the south haven't helped.
It's destroying forests, blocking farmers.
Yeah, reports of forests destroyed in Quneitra, farmers barred from land, worries about water sources. It just adds to the hardship.
And this isn't just Syria, right? It spills over.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Israel's running a permanent war economy. Military spending is sky high. The Gaza-Lebanon conflicts cost hundreds of billions of shekels. The 2025 defense budget is double 2023's.
That must impact other parts of their economy.
Potential impacts on tech, agriculture, though defense needs also drive R&D. Neighboring countries like Lebanon, Jordan, they're hit hard too. Development setbacks, lost income, refugees.
Lebanon especially.
Lebanon's economy is deeply affected by Hezbollah's role in Syria and Israeli actions. Regionally, growth slowed in 2024. Deficits are up for oil importers.
What about globally? Oil prices, supply chains.
Potential for oil price swings if shipping gets disrupted, like Suez Canal traffic.
Yeah.
But the world's maybe less vulnerable than in the 70s. Still, supply chains can be hit. Tech from Israel, essential goods like wheat, potential inflation.
Investment must be down too.
Foreign investment in the region has dropped. Israel reportedly saw a 60% fall after October 7th.
Any positive economic angles? This gas peace corridor?
It's an idea: Iran, Iraq, Syria pipeline to Europe. Could help reconstruction stability. But politically, it's incredibly challenging right now, highly aspirational.
And funding for reconstruction. Who pays?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question. These huge sums, but it's all conditional on political progress, stability, justice. Sanctions have had a chilling effect, though, maybe some easing now. Iran wants its $30 billion debt repaid, too.
So the economic devastation just feeds the instability.
Exactly. Creates a vacuum. Sustainable recovery looks a long way off without better security, better politics.
Yeah.
Israel's war economy shows how linked conflict and economics are. Reconstruction funding is scarce and conditional, pointing to more hardship.
Just looking at these numbers, it's overwhelming. And beyond the money, the human cost, it's almost unimaginable.
It truly is. Millions still displaced. 7.2 million inside Syria, 6.2 million refugees outside.
And the HTS offensive caused a new wave.
Over 1 million initially, hundreds of thousands still displaced months later. Plus, people returning from Lebanon because of the fighting.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of thousands coming back to nothing. Damaged homes, no services, danger everywhere.
Unexploded bombs.
UXO, ERW, a massive threat. Camps are overcrowded, and casualties just keep mounting. Over 600,000 dead, 113,000 disappeared before Assad fell.
And it continues. Civilian casualties.
Yes. Reports of Israeli strikes causing civilian casualties, like that drone strike in Dara in April. SNHR documented dozens of Israeli strikes early April. Amnesty reported deaths from Turkish and Israeli strikes post-Assad. Israeli forces restricting movement in the Golan villages.
And the unexploded ordnance.
A huge killer. Hundreds of casualties just since December 8th, many of them children. Farmland is contaminated. People take risks because they're desperate.
Access to basic services must be terrible.
Healthcare, education, legal aid impeded everywhere, especially near conflict zones or where movement is restricted. The economy collapsing makes everyone more vulnerable, especially women and girls. 16.7 million people need aid. Infrastructure is ruined.
And getting aid in must be incredibly hard.
Very hard. Funding is way down. The UN appeals are chronically underfunded. Access is blocked by fighting, shifting control lines, physical barriers like Israeli presence in Quneitra.
And the sanctions, HTS being designated.
That complicates everything, despite humanitarian exemptions, financial transfers, partnerships. It's tricky, plus operational issues like dual currency systems.
So it's just a crisis layered on crisis.
A deep, multifaceted crisis made worse by the instability after Assad and the ongoing military actions, including Israel's. Civilians in border areas suffered directly casualties, displacement, trauma, lack of access, destroying farmland, controlling water. That has long-term effects. And the aid funding gap just makes everything worse.
Looking at the summary of the humanitarian impact, It's just heartbreaking. The scale is immense.
So just to pull it all together,
Yeah.
we've seen the deep history, the massive shift when Assad fell, this complex web of players with competing goals,
Right. The geopolitical map being redrawn.
the devastating economic fallout, and this immense human suffering.
It definitely feels like the conflict is more direct now, maybe more volatile.
Which leaves us with a big question, really, something for you, the listener, to think about. What are the long-term consequences of Israel acting much more forcefully inside Syria and a group like HTS now running the show in Damascus?
What does it mean for, like, sovereignty, for regional order?
It's exactly. What are the ethics? What are the unintended consequences that might ripple out from this? Lots to chew on.
Absolutely. A hugely complex situation. We've really only scratched the surface here. If you have sources, perspectives you think we should look into for future dives, definitely send them our way.
Please do.
Thanks for joining us today on The Deep Dive.